I still remember the day I met her. She walked into my life like sunlight breaking through clouds, and for once everything felt right. It was the first week of college, and I'd been sitting alone in the campus cafe, nursing a coffee that had long gone cold. The room buzzed with chatter, excited voices bouncing off the walls, but I felt invisible, just another face in the crowd. That's when she sat down across from me. "Mind if I join you?" Her voice was soft but confident, cutting through the noise like a melody. I looked up to see her smiling at me, holding a tray with an overstuffed sandwich and a bottle of water. Her hair caught the light, framing her face perfectly, and I swear my heart skipped a beat. Sure," I stammered, moving my bag off the chair. "Go ahead." She introduced herself as Eve, and within minutes we were talking like old friends. We started with surface-level stuff, classes, majors, hometowns, but soon we were diving deeper. She told me about her dreams of becoming a writer, how she loved capturing the beauty in everyday moments. I shared bits of myself too, things I didn't usually tell people. My fear of failure, my quiet obsession with photography, my struggle to find where I belonged. With every word, it felt like she understood me better than anyone ever had. By the end of that hour, we'd exchanged numbers, promising to meet again. And we did every single day after that. Whether it was studying together in the library, grabbing late-night snacks at the diner near campus, or simply walking around the quad under the stars, being with Eve made everything brighter. She had this way of making even the smallest things feel magical. Once, during a thunderstorm, we ran outside barefoot and danced in the rain until our clothes clung to us like second skins. Another time, she surprised me with a scrapbook filled with photos she'd secretly taken of me over the weeks. Each page was a testament to our connection, a reminder that I mattered. But not everything was perfect, not entirely. There were whispers of unease, shadows lurking beneath the surface. One afternoon, while waiting for Eve outside the student center, I noticed him for the first time. His name was George, and he seemed determined to make everyone notice him too. He was charming, sure, but there was something off about him, like he wore confidence like a mask, hiding whatever insecurities lay underneath. When he laughed, it was too loud. When he smiled, it didn't quite reach his eyes. Eve waved him over before I could slip away unnoticed. "George, this is Alex," she said brightly, gesturing between us. "Alex, George is in some of my classes." "Nice to meet you," George said, extending a hand. His grip was firm, almost too much so, and his gaze lingered on me a moment longer than necessary. "You too," I replied, forcing a smile. Something about the way he looked at Eve set my teeth on edge, though I couldn't put my finger on why. Maybe it was the way he leaned closer to her than he needed to, or the way his laugh carried just a hint of mockery. Whatever it was, it left a sour taste in my mouth. Looking back, I should have seen the signs. But love has a way of blinding you. At the time, all I cared about was Eve, and how complete she made me feel. Little did I know that sense of wholeness would soon shatter into pieces. The next morning, as I headed to class, I spotted them talking by the fountain. They weren't just chatting. They were laughing, their heads tilted toward each other like they shared some private joke. My stomach tightened, but I shook it off. After all, what reason did I have to doubt her? Eve wasn't like that. She wouldn't betray me, or so I thought. It started subtly, a text unanswered here, a canceled plan there. At first, I brushed it off as stress from classes or some issue she wasn't ready to share. But then the excuses came more frequently. "I need space," she'd say, her voice soft but distant over the phone. "Just give me time." "Okay," I replied each time, trying to mask the ache in my chest with understanding. "Take whatever you need." But inside I was unraveling. Every missed call felt like rejection. Every silence between messages screamed louder than words ever could. I told myself to be patient, to trust her, but doubt crept in like ivy climbing a crumbling wall. Still, I held on because letting go meant losing her, and I couldn't face that. Then came the party. It was one of those campus gatherings where everyone showed up, friends, acquaintances, even professors brave enough to mingle with students half their age. I didn't want to go, not really, but Eve had asked me to come. "It'll be fun," she'd said, her tone light and teasing. "Don't make me beg." So I went, and that's when I saw them together. They were standing near the keg, heads bent close as if sharing secrets no one else deserved to hear. George laughed at something Eve said, his hand brushing hers casually, lingering just a second too long. My stomach churned, but I forced myself to approach. "Hey," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "Mind if I join you?" Eve glanced up, startled for a moment before plastering on a smile. "Of course not. We were just talking about," she trailed off, waving a hand dismissively. "Random stuff." George smirked, leaning back against the table with an ease that made my skin crawl. "Yeah, nothing important. Just getting to know your girl better." Your girl. The way he said it, it wasn't friendly. It was possessive, like he already owned a piece of her I didn't even realize was slipping away. I swallowed hard, forcing a laugh. "Well, don't steal her completely. I still need her around." Eve reached out, squeezing my arm. Her touch burned, not with warmth, but with guilt. "Don't worry, Alex. You're irreplaceable to me." Her words should have reassured me, but they only deepened the pit in my stomach. Something was wrong. I could feel it in the air, heavy and suffocating, pressing down on me until it became unbearable. Still, I nodded and smiled, pretending everything was fine. Because what choice did I have? Days later, she called me into her dorm room under the pretense of needing help with an assignment. When I arrived, though, she wasn't working. Instead, she sat cross-legged on her bed, staring at her hands like they held all the answers to the universe. "I think we need to stop talking," she said abruptly, her voice hollow. "It's not working out." The world tilted. For a moment, I thought I hadn't heard her correctly. What? She wouldn't meet my eyes. Us. This, whatever it is. It's not fair to either of us anymore. But why? I asked, desperation clawing its way up my throat. Did I do something wrong? Did I hurt you somehow? "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "It's not you. It's me. I can't keep doing this." And then it hit me, the truth behind her vague excuses, the distance growing between us. "Is it him?" I demanded, my voice cracking. "Is it George?" She flinched, but didn't deny it. That was answer enough. By the next morning, everyone knew. Social media lit up with pictures of Eve and George holding hands, laughing like they'd never known anyone else. They weren't subtle about it, they flaunted it, rubbing salt into the wound they'd carved into my heart. I stopped answering texts, skipped classes, and avoided friends who tried to check on me. Each day blurred into the next, a haze of numbness punctuated by sharp, stabbing pain whenever I thought of her. Who was I without Eve? What value did I have if someone I loved so deeply could toss me aside without a second thought? One night, lying awake in bed, I stared at the ceiling and wondered how far I'd fallen. Was this rock bottom, or was there still further to go? I didn't know then, but somewhere deep inside, anger began to simmer, a quiet rage that whispered promises of retribution. They took everything from me. Now it was my turn. Sleep became a stranger. Nights stretched endlessly, the silence broken only by the ticking of my alarm clock and the occasional car passing outside my dorm window. I'd lie there, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment with Eve in vivid detail. The way her laughter used to fill a room, how her hand fit perfectly in mine. Each memory felt like a knife twisting deeper, reopening wounds that never had time to heal. Classes blurred together into a haze of monotony. Professors droned on about topics I couldn't focus on, their voices fading into white noise as my mind wandered back to her. Why hadn't I seen it coming? How could I have been so blind? The questions haunted me, gnawing at what little self-worth I had left. Assignments piled up untouched, deadlines passed unnoticed. My grade slipped, but I didn't care. What was the point of succeeding if I couldn't even hold onto the one person who made life worth living? Friends tried to reach out, leaving concerned texts and knocking on my door. "You haven't been yourself lately," Sarah said one evening, her voice soft through the wood. "Let me in, Alex. Please." I ignored her, burying myself under blankets until she finally gave up and walked away. They wouldn't understand. No one would. How could they, when I barely understood it myself? Every attempt to explain felt like dragging shards of glass across my throat. So I pushed them all away, retreating further into isolation. The worst part was seeing them together. It seemed impossible to avoid. Eve and George were everywhere, laughing too loudly, touching too casually. Once, I caught sight of them sitting side by side in the library, his arm draped possessively over her shoulders. She leaned into him, smiling like she'd never smiled at me. My fists clenched involuntarily, nails digging into my palms hard enough to leave marks. I wanted to scream, to march over and demand answers, to shake her until she remembered everything we'd shared. But instead, I turned and walked away, swallowing the lump in my throat. Flashbacks tormented me constantly. Walking past the cafe where we first met, hearing a song she loved, even smelling rain, it all brought her back, sharp and painful. One afternoon, while aimlessly wandering campus, I found myself standing outside the fountain where we danced barefoot in the rain. The water sparkled innocently in the sunlight, oblivious to the storm raging inside me. I sank onto the edge, tears streaming down my face as I whispered, "Why did you do this to me?" Despair clawed at my chest, suffocating and relentless. For days, I toyed with drastic ideas, dropping out, disappearing entirely. Anything to escape the constant ache. But then something unexpected happened. It was late Friday night, and I was hunched over my desk, staring blankly at an unfinished essay. A knock startled me, followed by the sound of my door creaking open. Before I could protest, Mia stepped inside, carrying 2 steaming cups of coffee. "I brought reinforcements," she said lightly, setting 1 cup beside me. Her eyes scanned the mess of crumpled papers and empty takeout containers littering my room. "Looks like you've been busy." "Not really," I muttered, avoiding her gaze. She sat down on the edge of my bed, sipping her drink quietly for a moment before speaking. "You don't have to talk about it if you don't want to. But just know that I'm here, okay? You're stronger than you think." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut, not because they were profound, but because they were true. Stronger than I thought. Was I? I glanced at her, noticing the sincerity in her expression, and something inside me shifted ever so slightly. Maybe I wasn't completely broken yet. That night, after Mia left, I stood in front of the mirror for the first time in weeks. Dark circles shadowed my eyes, my hair stuck out in odd directions, and my shirt hung loosely off my frame. I looked like someone else entirely. But beneath the exhaustion, there was still fire, a flicker of anger burning low but steady. Every time I saw them together, it fueled that flame. Sadness lingered, yes, but now it mingled with something sharper, more dangerous. Anger. And anger, I realized, could be powerful. The next morning, scrolling absently through social media, I stumbled across a cryptic post from Eve. Something about the tension between her and George. My fingers hovered over the screen, curiosity prickling at the edges of my resolve. If there were cracks forming in their perfect facade, maybe I could widen them. Maybe I could make them pay. Months passed, each day blending into the next, like ink bleeding through paper. I kept my head down, focusing on survival rather than thriving. But even in my self-imposed exile, whispers found their way to me. Rumors spread like wildfire across campus. About Eve and George's fights, his late-night disappearances, her tearful confrontations with friends. At first, I dismissed them as idle gossip, the kind of drama that always swirled around people like them. But then I started noticing it myself. One afternoon, while grabbing lunch at the cafe, I overheard a group of girls talking about George. "He's such a player," one said, rolling her eyes. "I heard he's already hooking up with someone else behind Eve's back." Another chimed in, lowering her voice conspiratorially. "She doesn't deserve that. Not after everything she did to Alex." My stomach churned, but not from disgust, at least not entirely. A spark of vindication flickered inside me. Karma was circling them, slowly tightening its grip, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I allowed myself to feel something other than pain, satisfaction. That night, unable to sleep, I opened my laptop and scrolled aimlessly through social media. Eve's posts caught my attention, a string of vague complaints about trust issues and feeling undervalued. The captions were cryptic, but the subtext screamed louder than words ever could. Meanwhile, George's profile remained eerily silent, save for a few boastful updates about his busy schedule and exciting new opportunities. It didn't take a genius to piece together the cracks forming between them. But it wasn't until I stumbled upon something far more damning that the wheels in my mind began turning. Late one evening, while digging through old group chats I'd muted months ago, I noticed a forwarded message from an acquaintance. Attached was a screenshot of George's private Instagram account, one he thought was hidden from prying eyes. In it, he flaunted photos of himself with different women, accompanied by smug captions dripping with arrogance. Beneath one photo, a comment thread revealed snippets of audio recordings he'd shared with friends, recordings of intimate conversations meant to brag about his conquests. My blood ran cold as I scrolled further, piecing together the evidence. This wasn't just carelessness. It was calculated manipulation. He recorded these moments without consent, using them as trophies to inflate his ego. My hands trembled as I saved the screenshots, my heart pounding in my chest. If this got out, it would destroy him. Then there was Eve. Her oversharing online had always been a double-edged sword, and now it worked against her too. Scrolling through her public profiles, I found countless posts detailing personal struggles, embarrassing confessions, and thinly veiled jabs at me, all preserved for anyone to see. She'd painted herself as the victim, twisting the truth to gain sympathy from others. But when combined with George's indiscretions, her words took on a new meaning: hypocrisy. As I sat there in the dim glow of my laptop screen, a plan began to form. Slowly at first, then faster, like puzzle pieces clicking into place. They had destroyed me without a second thought, tearing apart my life for their own selfish gain. Now, it was my turn to make sure they paid. "They ruined me," I whispered to the empty room, my voice trembling with a mix of rage and resolve. "Now I'll ruin them." The thought should have scared me, but instead, it ignited a fire deep within. For months, I'd wallowed in despair, letting them win by default. But no more. Revenge wouldn't bring back what I'd lost, but it would balance the scales, and maybe, just maybe, give me back a piece of myself. I opened a blank document on my computer and started typing. Notes, ideas, strategies, it all poured out of me in a frenzy. By the time dawn broke, I had the skeleton of a plan laid out before me. It was risky, yes, but also brilliant. If executed correctly, it would expose both of them for who they truly were: liars, manipulators, and users. Before closing my laptop, I stared at the screen one last time, letting the weight of my decision settle over me. There was no turning back now, and yet something nagged at the edges of my mind. What if they saw it coming? What if they fought back? I couldn't let doubt creep in, not now. Not when I was so close. The next step was simple: gather allies. People who hated them almost as much as I did. Starting tomorrow, I'd start reaching out to mutual acquaintances, former friends, anyone willing to help me set the stage for their downfall. By the end of the week, I knew exactly how to play my first move. But as I closed my eyes and drifted off to sleep, a single question lingered in my mind. What happens when they realize they're being watched? The next morning, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in months. My mind was sharp, focused, like a blade honed to perfection. I knew exactly what I needed to do and who I needed to talk to. The first step was gathering intel, piecing together the puzzle that would ultimately bring them down. I started small, reaching out to people I hadn't spoken to since everything fell apart. Sarah, Mia, even a few classmates who'd been caught in Eve and George's orbit. All of them had stories to tell. At first, they were hesitant, unsure why I was suddenly interested after weeks of silence. But once I explained my intentions, not revenge for revenge's sake, but justice, they opened up. George is bad news, one guy named Ryan told me over coffee. He brags about hooking up with girls behind their backs, like it's some kind of game to him. His jaw tightened as he added, and Eve? She'll throw anyone under the bus if it makes her look better. Each conversation gave me more ammunition. George's predatory habits became clearer. His habit of recording private moments without consent, his pattern of gaslighting partners into doubting themselves. Eve's flaws came into focus too, her tendency to overshare embarrassing details about others online, her knack for twisting narratives to suit her agenda. Together, they made a toxic pair, each feeding off the other's worst traits. With enough dirt collected, I moved on to step 2, planting seeds of doubt. Creating anonymous social media accounts was easy. Maintaining them required patience. I spent hours crafting fake messages, editing screenshots to blur lines between truth and fiction. One message to Eve read, "I saw George flirting with someone at the bar last night. Thought you should know." Another to George said, "Eve's been posting stuff about your relationship online again. You might want to check her profile." It wasn't long before cracks widened. Eve confronted George publicly during a campus event, accusing him of cheating based on evidence she'd found, courtesy of my handiwork. George denied it vehemently, but his defensive tone only fueled suspicion. Their arguments grew louder, nastier, until even strangers began whispering about their dysfunction. Step 3 was where things got interesting. Former friends, alienated by Eve and George, rallied to my cause almost eagerly. Some shared screenshots of incriminating texts or call-out posts detailing how Eve had betrayed their trust. Others recounted stories of George preying on vulnerable girls, painting him as the predator he truly was. Every story added fuel to the fire, creating a narrative that neither of them could escape. By the time I reached step 4, the final preparations, I had everything I needed. Late nights were spent hunched over my laptop, compiling damning footage into a single, explosive montage. George's secret recordings played alongside clips of Eve's oversharing, edited seamlessly to highlight their hypocrisy. Interspersed were testimonials from former friends, their voices raw with betrayal. The finished product was devastating. A masterpiece designed to humiliate them both in front of everyone they cared about. As I watched the video one last time, my heart raced with anticipation. Everything was falling into place. Tomorrow, during the annual campus talent show, an event guaranteed to draw hundreds of students and faculty alike, I would execute the plan. All I had to do was hack into the venue's audiovisual system and play the montage on every screen in the auditorium. But there was still one loose end: timing. If I acted too soon, they might catch wind of what I was planning. Too late, and the moment wouldn't land with the impact it deserved. I needed precision, timing so perfect it left no room for error. That night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, doubts crept in again. What if something went wrong? What if they figured out it was me? The thought sent a shiver down my spine. They couldn't trace it back to me, could they? I shook my head, forcing the fear aside. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming power, proving to myself that I wasn't powerless against them. And yet, as sleep finally claimed me, one question lingered in the darkness. What happens when the whole world sees who they really are? The auditorium buzzed with energy as students filled the rows, laughter and chatter bouncing off the walls. It was the annual campus talent show, an event everyone attended, not just for the performances, but for the spectacle of it all. Tonight, though, the real show wouldn't come from the stage. I sat near the back, my hood pulled low over my face to avoid drawing attention. My laptop rested on my lap, its screen casting a faint glow in the dim lighting. Beside me, a small device connected to the venue's audiovisual system blinked steadily, a reminder that I was ready. All it would take was one click. My heart pounded so loudly I could barely hear the opening act, a comedy skit that earned polite applause. Every second felt like an eternity, each tick of the clock stretching thinner until I thought I might snap under the pressure. But I couldn't afford to hesitate now, not when I'd worked so hard to get here. As the MC introduced the next performer, I slipped out of my seat and moved toward the exit, positioning myself near the control booth at the rear of the room. From there, I had a clear view of both the stage and the massive screens flanking it. The timing had to be perfect, just chaotic enough to ensure maximum impact without giving them a chance to shut it down. When the music swelled for a dance routine halfway through the program, I took a deep breath and pressed play. At first, nothing happened. For a split second, panic surged through me. What if something went wrong? Then the screens flickered, freezing mid-performance before flashing black. Murmurs rippled through the crowd as people craned their necks, confused. And then it began. George's smug face filled the screen, followed by grainy footage of him whispering into his phone, bragging about hooking up with multiple women behind their backs. His voice echoed through the speakers, arrogant and unapologetic. Gasps erupted from the audience as names and faces appeared alongside timestamps, undeniable proof of his deceit. Before he could fully process what was happening, the montage shifted to Eve. Her tearful rants about feeling undervalued played over screenshots of her public posts criticizing others while painting herself as the victim. Clips of her mocking mutual friends under thinly veiled pseudonyms sparked laughter and jeers from the crowd. By the time testimonials from former allies scrolled across the screen, detailing how she'd manipulated and betrayed them, the room was alive with outrage. Eve froze on stage, her microphone slipping from her hand as tears streamed down her face. She tried to speak, to defend herself, but no words came out. Instead, she turned to George, who stood paralyzed beside her, his expression shifting rapidly between shock and fury. "This is fake," he finally shouted, pointing at the screen. "Someone edited this. It's not real." But his denial only made things worse. Someone in the audience yelled, "Then why does your voice sound exactly the same?" Laughter erupted again, cutting deeper than any accusation ever could. He opened his mouth to respond, then closed it, realizing too late that every word he said dug him further into the hole I'd created. For months, I'd lived in their shadow, watching helplessly as they destroyed everything I cared about. Now, as chaos unfolded around me, I felt something I hadn't allowed myself to feel in a long time: triumph. "They'll live in mine," I whispered under my breath, a cold satisfaction spreading through my chest like wildfire. But just as I started to slip away, blending into the crowd now fixated on the screens, I felt a hand grab my arm. I turned sharply, my pulse spiking, only to find Sarah standing there, her eyes wide with recognition. "You did this," she said, her tone equal parts awe and disbelief. "Didn't you?" I didn't answer. Instead, I wrenched free and disappeared into the sea of bodies, leaving her and everyone else staring after me. As I stepped outside into the cool night air, adrenaline still coursing through my veins, I realized something unsettling. Revenge wasn't as satisfying as I'd imagined. It didn't erase the pain or fill the void they'd left behind. If anything, it left me emptier than before. And yet, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. Because somewhere in the distance, I heard footsteps following me. The days that followed were a blur of whispers and stares. Eve became a ghost on campus, her presence met with sneers and mocking laughter. People who once fawned over her now avoided her like she carried a disease. She tried to fight back at first, posting defensive rants online, confronting anyone who dared criticize her, but it only made things worse. Each attempt to save face unraveled further, exposing even more hypocrisy. Her grades plummeted, assignments forgotten in the chaos, and within weeks, rumors spread that she'd applied to transfer schools. George didn't fare much better. The montage had unleashed a storm neither of them could contain. More victims came forward, sharing their own stories of how he'd manipulated and betrayed them. Some filed formal complaints with the university. Others took to social media, amplifying the outrage. By the end of the semester, George was expelled, and not quietly either. News outlets picked up the story, dragging his name through the mud until his future prospects crumbled into dust. No internship, no job offer, no second chances for him. As for me, I chose to stay out of the spotlight. The night of the talent show, when Sarah caught me leaving, I denied everything. "You're smarter than that," I told her firmly, my voice steady despite the guilt gnawing at me. Whether she believed me or not didn't matter. I wasn't about to confess. Let them think it was karma catching up. Sometimes silence speaks louder than words, after all. With Eve and George gone, life slowly returned to normal, or as close to normal as it could be. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. The weight that had crushed my chest for so long began to lift, replaced by something lighter, freer. I started attending classes regularly, rekindling old friendships I'd neglected during my descent into despair. Even professors noticed the change, praising my renewed focus and dedication. But it wasn't just academics I rediscovered. Photography, the passion I'd abandoned when Eve walked into my life, called to me again. I bought a new camera, one better than the one I'd let gather dust, and spent hours wandering campus, capturing moments I'd missed while consumed by bitterness. Each click of the shutter reminded me of who I used to be before they broke me. Someone creative, resilient, unafraid to stand alone. One evening, as I sat editing photos in my dorm room, I allowed myself to reflect on everything that had happened. Revenge hadn't healed me, not entirely. It hadn't erased the scars Eve and George left behind or brought back the person I'd been before they shattered my trust. But it had taught me something valuable. Strength isn't always loud or explosive. Sometimes it's quiet, patient, and deliberate, a slow burn that cuts deeper than anger ever could. They thought I was weak, I murmured to the empty room, staring at my reflection in the darkened window. They thought I'd disappear. But sometimes silence speaks louder than words, and patience cuts deeper than anger. And maybe that was enough. Still, as satisfying as their downfall had been, I couldn't help but wonder, what if Eve begged for forgiveness? Would I give her a second chance? Could I look past everything she'd done and see the girl I once loved? Or would I harden my heart forever, refusing to let her back in? I didn't have an answer yet. Maybe I never would. But for now, I was okay with the uncertainty. Karma may take its time, but it always finds its mark. And sometimes, rising above betrayal is the greatest revenge of all. So here's my question for you. If Eve begged for forgiveness, would you give her a second chance?